T minus 5 minutes. T minus 4 minutes. T minus 3 minutes. T minus 2 minutes. T minus 1 minute. T minus 50 seconds. T minus 40 seconds. T minus 30 seconds. T minus 20 seconds. Ten, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Yeah. Look, black and blue lives. Yeah. Hey, that's a new vibe. Yeah. Hey, black and blue lives. Yeah. Hey, that's a new vibe. Yeah. Hey, podcast lit. I think we got a hit. Yeah. Hey, black and blue lives. Yeah. Look, we got Prince Blue and Steph talking black and blue lives. Yeah. Hey, black and blue lives. Yeah. It's Steph and Blue.
Expensive to date.
What's up, Nick?
Hey, how's it going, man?
Good, brother. Chilling, man.
Thanks for having me back.
Dude, I'm very excited to have you back.
Right on. Ready to rock?
Let's roll, brother.
All right.
So let's get it started with the video. Do you know what video is coming up?
Yeah, I watched a video.
What did you think of the video? Should we play it first before we talk about it?
Yeah, I think so. I just wanted to say, too, Prince Blue's away this week. He's actually going to be proudly walking the stage to receive his doctors in criminal justice. So salute to Dr. Blue. We're proud of you. It's awesome.
Dude, I'm so proud of Dr. Blue.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a huge accomplishment, and he's freaking awesome. I can't say enough about it.
Yeah, and I would just like to say, too, it's a testament to his resilience, you know, having dealt personally, like Dr. Blue, with mental health struggles. And I know how hard it is to focus and, you know, to be able to read and write and do all the things that's required to go through a doctoral program. It's pretty impressive. So just says a lot about his resiliency and his character and his ability to kind of push through and push on and do something, you know, it's a huge accomplishment. So
no, 100%. Dude. Yeah, that's why I'm always bragging on him when he kind of underplays like his accomplishments, but that's a huge accomplishment that like 0.05% of the population actually achieves, and that he's able to do that. So I mean, it's especially think how many police officers do you know that have the doctorate degree? No,
yeah.
I can name maybe 2 or 3 total.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, so I mean, he's amazing to say the least. So I'm just honored to be put in his class to be able to like to do that. I mean, it's awesome.
Yeah. So, I mean, like I said, just honored did he ask me to be here tonight. I've never done anything like this. I've been on 2 podcasts. I've never hosted. So he put special hosts. So I'll probably live up to that tonight. But
yeah, I kind of feel lost without him because he's always the one keeping me in check and keeping me in the right direction. So
yeah, where's your fearless leader, right? Speaking of leadership.
Yeah, dude, he's amazing. I mean, he's so like, and I've said it before, like, and people know that, you know, we worked in the same division before I got promoted. We were the officers, and he was just the solid rock who was a good cop, was always the person to go to get advice and he was awesome. So I'm just so proud of him, and I tell him every time I see him, dude. I'm like I think he gets annoyed with me because I always talk about how awesome he is, especially with getting the doctorate degree, and he got his master's and doctorate. So, but I'm just so proud of him for him to be able to do that because he's just. I mean, I definitely look up to him. He's amazing what he does. So,
yeah, and like I said, I think it's big of him because you know, you get medically retired, you leave the career early, it's easy to just, I guess, walk away and, you know, kind of walk away and don't look back. But he's actually still pursuing this field.
Yeah, he downplays it. So, like,
yeah,
you know, he was involved in an officer-involved shooting where he had to shoot somebody. He was also his wreck. He should have been killed. Like, I've seen the car. I've seen, you know, it was a horrible, horrible wreck where, so people don't know. So if you don't know, he responded to 2 officers were down. They were dealing with a 1055, which is a drunk driver. They were out with the drunk driver, giving them sobriety test. Another drunk driver hit their car, critically injured both of the officers. They were literally seriously injured. I knew both of them. They were really good officers, both critically injured. He responded. He was one of the first ones there. He positioned his vehicle. Of course, what you do, you know, you position your vehicle to protect the other officers. He was in his car protecting the other officers when another drunk driver, so this was the third drunk driver, hit his car. He went completely unconscious, and he woke up in the hospital. Thank God, you know, his wife was there and everything. But I mean, he should have been killed. I mean, it was the damage to the vehicle that's sustained from the third drunk driver was just massive, and he's very lucky to be alive.
Wow.
He recovered from that and came back to work, and, you know, had constant issues with his back and neck, and just, I mean, he kept coming back after the shooting, after the wreck, and eventually it just became too much. And at a certain point, you have to look what's best for you and your family, and kind of tap out. But he was you know, he was an Army veteran. I mean, the dude squared away, man. I mean, he's a good dude, man. I mean, I don't think anyone I know would ever say anything negative about him. He was a good dude. So.
Well, that's awesome, man. Thanks for sharing. I didn't know all that. So
Yeah.
And
You
would never tell me, right?
He's so humble. Like he didn't share that information. So, like, someone has to brag about him a little bit to hype him up, because he's such a humble guy. And so like, it downplays everything. But dude, he's legit, dude. He's a real deal.
He's not here to stop you. So
exactly. Yeah. So,
take advantage of it.
Yeah. So, I mean, he's my hero, man. He's, you know, and then came back with a vengeance and got his doctorate. You know, his wife squared away. She's supportive. She's got, you know, she's amazing. And then it's like I mean, it's an amazing story to see his progression and come back. So, I mean, he was a good cop. He was fun to be around. He took care of business. You know, he was just a good dude all the way around. So I don't want to talk about him like he's dead or something, but he's not here. So I can brag about him a little bit, because he was just such a good dude, man. I mean, you got to love the dudes who are squared away and just are humble, and they never say anything bothered about themselves. But so that's when like, you know, the people who worked with them have to like talk them up and stuff. So just like, so it's good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for sharing. You want to check out our first video?
Yeah, let's go straight to it. Let's
right.
You know what the police need more than anything else? They need money for training. And the way the police departments are set up, they do the most ridiculously minuscule amount of training for what their job is. So, as you know, I was in the SEAL teams. We would train for 18 months. 18 months we would train to go on a 6-month deployment. Cops, they get like 2 hours or 4 hours of combatives training a year. That's complete insanity. It's complete insanity. The thing I've been saying is cops should train 1/5 of the time. 1/5 of the time you should be training, whether it's 2 hours a day, 4 times a week, or whether it's 1 day a week where you're going to go and you're going to go through scenarios. You're going to do combatives. You're going to work with simunition. You're going to do de-escalation drills, because it's really hard. I mean, being a cop I think is the hardest job in the world.
What'd you think, man?
So he's definitely 100% right. So, but the problem is, logistically, how do we train, have enough manpower to do the training, and resources and budget to do that we need to do? And you know as well as I do. So I was over a specialized unit. So street crimes, my last 6 years, I was over a street crimes unit. So which is like a tactical unit. We would do search warrants, takedowns. So we would train monthly, kind of like SWAT training. So you have once a month training where we do SWAT training, shoot house, takedowns, just all the tactical stuff that most officers don't get. Most officers only get 4 hours or so, 4 to 6 hours a year of hands-on training, like combat training, as well as shooting. Most officers, people don't realize most officers only get probably 4 to 8 hours of shooting training a year, and that's definitely not enough for what we deal with and the high liability. And I know it varies per state. What can you say about, because you work in a different state, what type of training did you guys get per year just for a regular officer?
I worked at 2 different agencies. The first one, I was only there 2 years, so I didn't get like a really good feel for it. But the first agency, the training was bare minimum. Arrest and control techniques, a couple hours a year. And then, you go to the range for 30 minutes, pop off 50 rounds, get your, hey, you pass, go on, go out, go to work. And then my second agency was a very, very squared away agency. We worked a 3/12 work schedule, but once a month we had, when I was a patrol officer, we had a patrol training day, which was generally an 8-hour day. And the entire day was dedicated to training. So whether that be scenario-based training, like shooter don't shoot things with simunitions, legal update type stuff, important stuff that you need to stay up on, range time. So even in those 8-hour days, oftentimes it didn't seem like quite enough time, but that was our culture there. And that went on, so patrol has the 8 hours a month. And then I was also on the SWAT team as a hostage negotiator. We had, monthly trainings there. Sometimes as negotiators, we would train on our own. And then we would also have frequent trainings with the tactical guys. And then as far as arrest and control techniques, I think I'm trying to remember, and it's been a while, but I believe it was like once a year, but I believe it was 2 days in the dojo. And so, maybe with lunch and breaks and all the grab ass and, maybe 10 hours a year, which, it's a long 10 hours. It hurts. And, but I definitely agree that, and I'm assuming when Jocko talks about combatives training, he's talking about going hands-on. And
yeah.
I definitely agree that cops definitely, even me when I was there, needed more exposure to that just to get down the kind of the repetition and the feel for using the, searching techniques and the control holds and the takedowns.
It's like learning a foreign language. You have to practice to learn it. And most departments have an 8-hour requirement per year for the firearms, and then 4 to 6 hours a year for defense tactics. So, I mean, that's literally not enough, because, I mean, it really depends. I mean, some days we're going hands-on 4 or 5 times a shift, and it might be a week or so before we go hands-on again. so the bigger the agency, the more training you probably get. Like Charlotte Mecklenburg Police Department, we're the 13th biggest agency in the United States. We get really good training, but it's still not enough. But I've spoken to other officers in the state who have zero training per year with defense tactics.
Yeah.
And they may go hands-on less, but it's still an issue. So, I mean, think about it. Most officers in their whole career, they say about 10% are involved in shootings if they do a 30-year career. But every officer is involved in a physical use of force, sometimes daily, depends on where you work, daily, weekly, monthly, but it's going to happen. And the training is not there to it doesn't make sense. Like, so, 4 to 6 hours a year for most officers in most states for combative training, when more than likely that's going to be your, once a week, once a day, once a shift. I mean, depending where you're at, issue. I mean, that's just not even close to enough.
Yeah, I agree. And then piggybacking on that, when you're not training in the proper use of, arrest and control techniques, you're more likely to hurt yourself, so you're going to have officers that are getting into these altercations and having to use force, not applying, restraint techniques appropriately, hurting themselves and or hurting, the person they're arresting or detaining, and it just creates more liability.
No, absolutely. So not only you raise a good point. Not only does it raise the risk factor for the officers, but also the suspect,
right? Because
you don't have the training to know how to properly handle them. And looking at a couple of comments, Michelle Martin, thank you for continually being there. She's a face that's always showing up on the. I know her personally. She's been around. She's been awesome. Very supportive of law enforcement. And then Pat brought up a good point. Yeah, K9, they train once a month. They do at minimum 10 hours a month of training, 10 to 12 hours with their K9. But officers don't. So, so I was fortunate enough to be in a specialized tactical unit where monthly we would train, 8 to 10 hours a month in takedowns, shooting scenarios, shoot house, and do all that stuff. But most people don't realize, like, you think, oh, he's a police officer, he knows all the tactics, he knows stuff. But unfortunately, most officers don't get that. If they don't have the budget or they don't have the time to train, because look at the fact most departments are understaffed by the statistic is like 15 to 20% of what they're supposed to be. They don't have the time to train and statistically do what they need to do to get up to par. And why not? Like, that video brought up a good point. Officers should train 20% of the 10 to 20% of the time in actually training to be sufficient in what they do to take the practical stuff. But unlike the military where they train 16 months to go on a mission, we don't have that time. We go through the basic training and they throw us on the road and they give us remedial shitty training, basically maybe once a year and we're dealing with stuff every day. And then what happens is if we don't perform perfectly, it's a lawsuit. It's, we get fired, we get, chastised. So it's just, we're always behind the 8 ball per se in training what we need to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And as long as we're talking about training, you mentioned the word budget. So I'm going to jump up on my soapbox here for a minute. Going back to the defund the police era, I guess, that we just went through, I was screaming from the rooftops, like, the first thing to go, at least at the 2 agencies I've worked at, and I work for the federal government right now, the first thing to go is a training budget.
Absolutely.
So when we're upset because police aren't responding appropriately or handling things the way the Monday morning quarterbacks and the internet experts say we should, you're demanding the police be defunded, but the very first thing, and I don't think anybody that's ever worked in law enforcement will argue with me, is the training budget. So any conferences that officers are slated to attend, any kind of extracurricular training that they can go learn, come back and teach, other officers within the department and kind of share the knowledge, it all comes to a screeching halt. So when we were talking about defunding the police, you're not taking away their paycheck. You're not taking away their cars or their uniforms. You're taking away their training, and a lack of training is often what leads to these poorly thought out uses of force or these bad decisions that we want to tear apart. So that's my soapbox. And, like I said, I was screaming that, but, I was just kind of talking to myself. But
no, dude, you're 100% on cue and right. So these people that are screaming about cut the budget, defund the police, the worst thing they could do is defund the police, because you take away the training budget and you take away, basically the training of the officers. So training is very important. I know some officers who are in smaller agencies who never go to training.
Right. Yeah.
So if people don't know, the state mandates maybe in North Carolina, and we're one of the highest standard states, right? So basic BLET, which is basic law enforcement training, which you go to like your certification for police academy. When I went, it was like 540 hours. I think it's like 680 hours now. But after that, it's 24 or 30 hours a year of in-service training. So, and most of that is like bullshit stuff, like like cultural diversity and juvenile sensitivity, and they add, each year is different, but they add all this bullshit stuff that it's smoke and mirrors, right? But the practical training, like your firearms, like an 8-hour class, you have to do like a combat course, which is each department gets to make it up. It could be like shooting behind a barricade, and it's just super mundane and not really practical, and that's all they get. So, but think about it. We're out there on the street, even the smaller departments, every day dealing with bad guys, and sometimes a minimum amount of training experience, and which leads to higher liability for the cities, right? So people don't realize that. So we need to pay more for training, so the officers are squared away and make better decisions, and it leads to less lawsuits and just less better round issues.
You're gonna pay up front for the training or pay in the back end for the lawsuits.
No, absolutely. So and we see it in all these videos that we watched before, and we critiquing the behest that officers are not aggressive enough or too aggressive. Like training is key. Like I've been involved in multiple officer involved shootings, right? So I was involved in a big one where my partner got shot beside me, and it was like 82 rounds fired. I shot 33 rounds. The suspect shot my partner, shot another dude shooting at me. We exchanged fire. And all my reloads and thought process and everything was just automatic based on my training experience. So when I did a reload, I kind of thought, so give a scenario. I was on the way home at the time. I told my wife, hey, I'm on the way home. I'm coming home. The call goes out. I worked in a district where, it wasn't unusual for like 3 people to get shot a shift in Charlotte, right? So 13 districts. I worked at really probably the second or third highest crime rate. So we'll get back to this. Let's go to commercial break, and we'll come back, and I'll tell you the rest of it. Great commercial break. So, if you followed our story or our website for a while, you know what happened. But basically, I'm in the office getting ready to go home. I call my wife. Hey, I'm on the way home. An ADW, which is solid deadly weapon, comes out. I've got a lieutenant who's at the office late. He had a community meeting. He said, "Hey, I'm in a route." The rest of my shift was tied up. At the time, I was just over the patrol shift. Was tied up on a jump and run from like a largely from Lotto. So they're all chasing some POEs, on the other side of town. So I was like, well, I better go to that and make sure everything's good. 99.9% of the time you go to shooting, the suspect's already gone. There's no issue. You go there, secure the scene, whatever. So I'm like, all right. The other sergeant who was checking on was like, hey, he was in plain clothes. He's like, hey, I'll check on, I'll go. I'm like, well, I'm already in uniform. I'll run down there real quick and then secure the scene and then I'll go home. So I show up, me and my partner, who's the lieutenant, really good dude. We show up, we're by ourselves. We're going through the parking lot as a townhome community. We're guns out looking for a victim. Well, we see somebody come out of the apartment complex and the townhomes, and he's got his shirt off. It's cold. It's April 26th, so it's kind of cold, rainy, low light. And I'm like, yo, bro, who's got a gun? He ignores me. And his girlfriend comes out. And she's like, yo, bro, like, yo, don't do it. So she's hyped up. And I say, hey, show me your hands. At that point, like the way he was amped up, I'm like, show me your hands. And he runs towards the car. Well, the car's facing the townhome. So me and my partner close the distance, right? We got our guns out. Shows your hands. He jumps in the back seat. And in my mind, I'm like, shit, dude, he's going for a fucking gun. And so we're punched out. We don't have any cover concealment. And then he jumps in the back seat. And I'm like, oh, because he's not trying to get away, right? So if he's trying to get away, he jumps in the front seat and drives away. He jumps and he comes out, and next thing is a muzzle flash, pow, pow, pow. And it was like, shit. And in my mind, I'm like, oh, it's going down, dude. Like, this is happening. And my partner gets hit. He gets shot. And I don't remember how. I remember no way he gets shot. He ended up getting shot like right above here in his vest. He goes down, and I'm popping rounds at the dude. He's behind, covering somebody. He's behind the car. The trunk's open, and I'm hitting him. I see him flinching, and we're still firing. And I'm going to cover, and I go down, and it's because I'm fucking uncoordinated and not trip. Because they always tell you in training, like if you're shooting and you're backpedaling, you're gonna fall down, right? Because all your muscle memory and stuff is going towards so I fall down, and I'm in my mind, I'm like, fuck, I'm hit. He got me, but I'm like, I'm still alive, keep shooting. So I'm popping rounds at him, and he's probably 10 yards away, and I'm just throwing rounds through the fucking trunk and bumper, and I do a reload, and I'm pow, 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 and I get up and I go to cover, and we exchange rounds, and I go prone, and we keep shooting. But it shows you in my incidents that all my reloads, my shooting, and my maneuvers were all training. Everything training kicked in. I didn't think about anything. I didn't like, oh, I need to reload or I need to go to cover. Everything just happened. And that shows you how important training experience is important, but also the training. So you could have the experience, but also you have to train muscle memory and everything to get that stuff down pat. And it's, if you take away, people don't realize, if you take away the police budget, if you want to defund the police, one of the first things that goes is training, right? They take away, training is a huge, probably 25% of the budget. So if you want to cut the budget by 25%, the first thing that goes is training. So, which is kind of hypocritical, because you want better trained police officers to make better decisions, but you want to cut their budget, which takes away their training, which leaves you with less trained police officers.
Yeah.
And if, like I said, the very first stage that but I think, probably Nick, your experience too. Have you experienced like when they wanted to defund the police? I mean, would that affect your agency too?
Yeah, I mean, I was already out of law enforcement when all. Well, real quick, I just wanted two things. Thanks for sharing that. I know that was probably it always hurts a little bit to talk about, so thank you for sharing your story there.
Absolutely.
And then uh, I just want to add, so basically, an old crusty range master told me one time, you have to do something like 10,000 times before it becomes automatic.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right. And so you had an automatic response, right? Your training and experience, when the situation presented itself, you just did what you had done thousands of times, and that's how you survive. So again, just emphasizing the importance of training. But yeah, I was already out of law enforcement when that whole thing went down. But at my agency, we did have budget woes at one point, and training did get put on hold. Conferences, things of that nature. So I knew, it's an easy thing to cut because it's not the wheels keep turning when training's not occurring. But I will say that the wheels can get wobbly. So yeah, I never dealt with that. Defund the police. I was no longer a police officer. I left law enforcement in 2018. So
in my experience, 2016 was Ferguson. Things started going downhill. So that's when my first major shooting was. Then Dallas happened. We had 5 officers killed. I went to Dallas. They sent 12 of us to Dallas to represent the department. That was really tough.
Yeah.
But that's when things started going downhill, in my opinion, with police agencies. So, and Michelle asked a good question about, were you okay? Well, in my incidents, so I was in a shooting involved. It was Saturday night, April 26, 2016. The next day was Easter. So my shooting happened around 10 p.m. I didn't go to bed till 6 a.m. I was all jacked up the next morning. Got up at like 9 a.m. It was Easter. Had to spend time with family. Stayed up all day. I couldn't get it off my mind. It's just repetitive. And the next day, I had to meet with homicide detectives to go back to the scene. And what that really taught me was you'd always see videos and news stories about, officer said this happened. He gave a story, and then looking at the video, it wasn't consistent with what the officer said. Dude, everything was different in the daytime, right? Because in my shooting, it was late at night, light rain, low light conditions. Well, when I went out with homicide, it was daylight. Everything was still roped off. I thought I was closer than I was. I thought that I was behind a certain car that I was. I mean, it was just totally different because it is totally true. People don't realize I don't care the amount of training experience you have. At that point when I was in the shooting 16, I had 17 years of experience, multiple years of SWAT team. I was tactical. I was all this stuff. Everything was totally different, man. I mean, I remember in my mind, then you go there, I'm like, I thought I was closer. I thought I was, it really fucked you up to honestly, to put you in that position. And I really, it's sad that sometimes, an officer gives a statement because they're not allowed to look at the video. They don't want you to look at the BWC or dash cam video before you give a statement. You give a statement in your mind that, like, for instance, so after I went down, I didn't know I was shot. I was bleeding. I went to the cover. I'm like, okay, I'm probably hit because I fell down, but I'm still alive. Keep shooting. And they said, how many rounds did you shoot when you were prone? Because I ended up going prone, shooting under the car where the suspect was. He was already hit a few times. And I was like maybe 12 times, and it was like 3 or 4 rounds. So nothing I was giving a statement to was consistent with a video, but I was given the honest truth. But if you take the video versus what I remember, how many rounds and all this stuff was fight, it's not consistent. So people could take that, oh, the officer's trying to cover up or do this, or dude, you don't fucking remember, man. I mean, this is an intense life and death shit. Like I don't like in my mind I thought maybe 12 rounds. I shot 3 or 4 like prone. It's but people will take that and use that against you, like, oh well, you're lying because you shot 4 rounds and you said you shot 12 or whatever. But is in high intensity stressful situation, you'll remember. Same thing in the use of force. What departments do when you have a use of force? They want you to articulate, I grabbed the suspect with my right hand, he resisted, he grabbed my left with the left hand, grabbed my shirt, I struck him with my left hand one time. They want everything so particular. Dude, you're in a fucking fight, or you don't remember. Like I've literally been in fights before with suspect. I'm like, did I hit him? I don't remember it, because things just happen. Your training kicks in and you just react. Like, so, and then people use that against you. Well, like you said, you only hit him twice and you hit him 4 times. What? That's what I remember. Like, so the average Joe doesn't take that in consideration, that when shit hits the fan, you're not like, okay, with my right hand I did this. You're just reacting, right? So it's like somebody pushes you and you react and push them back. Like it's not, you're not calculating, okay, I struck one time with my right hand, then one time with the left hand, I grabbed with the right. And that's how the departments want you to articulate it, but you don't know. And that's what I have a lot of problems with. Some departments won't let you look at the video, the BWC or dash cam, prior to writing your statement. And so you're just going by memory. So you don't remember. Like I've literally been in fights before, and I'm like, I don't know if I hit the guy or not. We just were fighting and struggling, and which I think is a really disservice to the officers, because they should be able to look at the video and help refresh their memory of what they did. Because when shit hits the fan, you're just going based on training and survival mode. You're not thinking about, okay, well, let me right hand, left hand. It's unreasonable. And then, but if you don't articulate it exactly 100% the way it's supposed to be, then they say you're lying, you're trying to cover it up.
Yeah. And a way I've explained that to people, to kind of like, I don't know, I think most people can relate to, is to like video games. You're playing some video game and you're fighting in the video game, right? And you hold down like left trigger, and if you hit X, you'll kick. And then now you're getting your ass kicked in this video game, and you're like, bah, 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 you're just pressing buttons and shit, hands and fists, and feet are flying. And then imagine, okay, the game's over, and then somebody comes and says, now how many times did you push the trigger and X button? And you're like, I don't know.
You're reacting to a reaction. Oh, yeah. Or like, oh, how easy is it? Oh, you should have went right. Or
right, yeah.
You should have done this. It's easy after the fact to judge what you should have done, but you have literally hundreds of millimeters of seconds to make these decisions.
Yeah, and so it's very, very hard to recall. Especially immediately after. Sometimes as the adrenaline subsides and your thoughts become clear, and you'll be like, oh, and then you start recalling certain things. But I explained that to somebody one time, because they're like, well, how come there's so many inconsistencies on what the video shows? And I said, because like, just think like if you're in that, you're getting your ass kicked in Call of Duty or GTA, and you're just pushing buttons and you're trying to survive, or
No, and Pat just made a good point. Is when your adrenaline kicks in, it's training and your reaction, and your mind is not in the place where it's like, okay, I'm going to remember doing X, Y, Z. I didn't know if I got shot. Like that's how when my adrenaline, I went down and I'm like, shit, I'm hit, because I went down and I'm like, and I went to cover and I'm bleeding. And I got criticized because I go to cover, and every time this guy's shooting at me, everything's slow motion, right? You hear that. So my partner's hit, he goes to cover, and I'm exchanging rounds with pow, and I'm going to cover, and I'm pow, pow. Everything's slow motion. And I'm like, shit, this is really happening. And I go down, and I'm like, fuck, I'm hit. In my mind, I'm like, I'm hit. I'm down. I'm still alive. Keep shooting. I do a reload, and I'm like, pow, 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 pow. And I'm just, people, oh, you got to aim the trigger. No, I was just slapping the trigger with all the fucking hundreds and hundreds of hours I had. I'm just trying to put rounds at them, right? So I'm trying, and I'm survival mode, and I go to cover, and I'm like, okay, in my mind, I'm like, I'm hit, but I'm still alive. And they're like, oh, I don't know what my code number was. I mean, my call sign was like 21 10 25. I'm like, all right, cool. I'm bleeding. I don't know if I hit, but I look down and my arm's bleeding because it's raining, right? So I got blood coming down my arm, but I'm like, all right, cool. As long as I don't get hit in the head, I'm good. That's why I was like, as long as I don't take a headshot, I'm good. I'm probably hit in the arm. I'm bleeding. My partner shot. He goes to cover. And I'm like, but I'm good, right? So, and what happened was when I was backpedaling, right? And they always tell you in tactical training, if you backpedal, you're probably going to fall, right? Well, of course, I fall down because I'm uncoordinated, and I fell on my arm, and my elbow hit, and I'm bleeding from my elbow, and I wasn't shot. And but when they asked me, I was like, I don't know if I'm hit, but I'm bleeding, right? So then I got a lot of criticized a little bit because like, oh, you thought you were shot. I don't fucking know, dude. How many people were shot and don't even realize it? All I know is I saw blood come down my arm, and I'm like, okay, I could be hit, but I'm like, I'm bleeding. I don't know if I'm hit. So which is an honest statement, right? So, but I'm still in the game, and people don't realize what it's like to be in that scenario, right? So it's like people always love to money quarterback. Oh, you thought you. Why did you think you were hit or whatever? But yeah, dude, you're bleeding, and the dude's shooting at you, and every time he shoots at me, I'm like, shit, I'm hit because he's so close, and I'm going to cover, and I see the muzzle like, damn, I'm hit. Damn, I'm hit. I'm thinking every round's hitting me. So let's go to the leadership video and go from there.
All right.
I hope you see the truth. This puppet show stays on because of you fools. We've been dancing with the devil way too long. I know it's fun, but get ready to pay your dues. Oh God.
So that short read is pretty powerful about people don't realize most of the stress from being an officer is the command staff. So, and I'm sure you've been there too, Nick, is you're getting ready to get into use of force. And you're like, shit, I'm going to get in trouble. Shit, I have to do paperwork. So that's the main thing on your mind is worried about how the admin is going to look at it. Because maybe you use some aggressive language prior to the arrest to try to de-escalate. But how many of these videos have we seen where officers are kind of trying to de-escalate to the point where they're not using the appropriate amount of force needed because they're worried about how the perception or the administration is going to look at it, and they end up getting hurt. The suspects end up getting hurt more than they should have because they're worried about perception.
Yeah. And, I watched this video and I feel like whoever created that obviously has some huge leadership failures at their department. As a young officer, I came from the Marine Corps. So kind of a different style leadership there, very, very hard nosed, do as you're told or else type leadership. And you say, aye, sir, and you do what you're told. And then you get into law enforcement and, I'm not a combat veteran, so I can't speak for, leadership in combat, but in garrison, in the rear, as we called it, You know, there's a leadership style in the military. When you get into law enforcement, the stakes are higher, obviously, because every time we, you know, pull up to that station, you're in danger, right? You're in potential danger from the time you get there till the time you get home. But my opinion on this, I didn't have a lot of the, you know, leadership woes at my second department, but at my first department, I could give an example of maybe what this looks like. I was a brand new rookie cop. I worked for a smaller police department. I was basically a park police officer. So I policed parks like in Los Angeles County. And I was paired up with a very, very seasoned officer. He had retired from like LA Metro Transit Police. And he was, you know, 55, which is a dinosaur for a cop patrol. And I was 27.
Yeah.
And I was paired up with this guy. Long story short, I was on a directed patrol at a park that had, you know, it was high crime, a lot of riffraff going on. So they had us basically parked at the park, you know, like a security guard almost. Like you patrol that park and nothing more. Well, I heard an officer get on the radio and he was closing a park and there was some angry people and he sounded a little bit worked up on the radio and I could hear people yelling and he said, you know, I got some uncooperative people here. And so I looked at my partner, you know, that's been a cop for 30 years. I've been a cop for 30 minutes. And I said, shh. And mind you, I'm in the passenger seat. I'm the bookman. He's driving. And I look at him. I said, should we go? And he says, yeah, let's go. I said, okay. So I get on the radio. I put us en route. And then, you know, we're like 25 minutes away.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so within 5 minutes, he gets on the radio. I'm code 4, which means I'm safe. I'm good. I don't need any help. So we turn around, we go back to the park and we finish up our shift. Well, at the end of watch, we go back to the station and I get called into the sergeant's office and I'll reserve my opinion of this sergeant, but he was the sergeant that would sit in the office with his gun belt hanging on the back of the chair with the TV on.
Yeah.
And he called me into his office and he kicked one of the female officers that was in the office out and he said, close the door. And I'm thinking like, okay, you know, I was like, oh, he's going to tell me good job for going to back, you know, that other officer. Long story short, he proceeds to rip my ass. And who do you think you are? You don't make those decisions, you know, Mr. Edwards, you understand me? And he's almost talking to me like they talk to me in the Marine Corps, you know? And I'm thinking like, what the fuck's going on here? I just I was with an officer with 30 years on. Why is he not in here? Why are you chewing the rookie's ass? I'm on probation. I wasn't driving. So those are the kind of things that'll put a really bad taste in your mouth.
Absolutely.
Because now you're thinking like, wait a minute. I went to the academy. I went through field training and they told me, you hear an officer that needs help, you go help him.
You fucking go.
And so now
just leave the call, whatever, you can go.
Yeah. So now I'm sitting there going, what the hell is happening right now? I'm getting my ass chewed for doing my job. What the hell? And, you know, and I think he had an ego issue, which I think was mentioned in that video. And I didn't ask his permission, right? He didn't give the blessing. We made a command decision in the field to go back. And mind you, I worked in Los Angeles County in the parks. And so we were like an hour away from the police station.
It's a huge county. People don't realize like some of these counties and out west and stuff, how large they are.
So it's not like I could just be like, hey, Sarge, you want me to roll out there? No, you make a split second decision, you go. So anyways, those are the types of things when you read this and you think, well, what does that mean? Stuff like that, because it's demoralizing. So now when that call comes out, you sit there and you're like, well, I'm not going to go because I'm going to get my ass chewed again. Last time I tried to do police work, I got my ass chewed. Then God forbid that officer does get harmed, injured, and now you have to live with the shame and guilt of not being the first one there. So it does create, and I think that's what they're alluding to, you know, and that's my sob story, whatever. It's just an example, you know, life went on. I learned from it. But I think that's what they're referring to, just for anybody watching that maybe doesn't fully understand what they're talking about. You know, and people will do things or not do things, but take advantage of you to make themselves look better.
Yeah, because So I would tell my guys, I'm like, hey, this patch says Charlotte Mecklenburg, which is the city of Charlotte, Mecklenburg County. So we were county police, so we did city of Charlotte, and we had all of Mecklenburg County. So I'm like, if shit happens and you're close to it, go to it. If there's a 1033 call, which is like officer needs assistance, don't ask me, just fucking go.
Yeah.
If you're close, especially if it's officer involved or somebody needs it, just go. You have my preordained blessing to go. Where I like, don't ask me. I'm not. But I've had sergeants before where like, oh yeah, that was across the border of the 13 when we have 13 districts in Charlotte, and you didn't ask my permission, and even though you're like 10 feet away, because they don't want to do paperwork or they're useless, right? So my dude, go. If it's 3 districts away and officers need help or so, go. You like we have to look after each other. We're cops, right? So like, I mean,
yeah, no one else is coming.
No one else is coming. We got to go. And you're never going to get the shit from me, but you do have, like in Charlotte, we're supposed to have 2,000 officers. There's like, of course they're short, probably, nowhere near the size of LA or LA County, but we, probably 200 officers, 250 officers short now. So there's probably 135 sergeants, but it's hit or miss. Some sergeant. So each out of 13 districts, each district has 3 response areas, right? So some sergeants would be like, okay, well, you're in the same district but you're outside of your response area and you didn't ask permit. I mean, it's ridiculous how, but it's always the leaders who've never been cops. They don't want to do pay. I'll tell my guys, look, dude, if you have to, I don't care what you have to do. I will never complain about you doing paperwork. I get paid a lot of money to do extra. If you have to punch someone in the face, if you have to shoot them, if you have to do whatever you have to do, if you have to chase the bad guys, I'll do the paperwork. I get paid a lot of money. I never once ever complained. And you have a certain segment of sergeants and leaders who like, the more people I write up, the more people I harass or whatever, the better leader I am. That's not true. And I looked at it as a fact is, dude, if I had an issue with somebody, I would go tell them like, hey, this is an issue. If it's officer safety issue or policy issue, hey, this is an issue I have. Make sure you don't do it again. I never had a fucking problem again. I never wrote up. I was a sergeant for 7 years. I led my division in uses of force. So out of the whole division, I had more use of force than any other officer because I was always first on scene, where it's at, and I led by example. You got to do what you got to do. If my guys were to use of force, I never complained about doing paperwork. But you had the sergeants who I worked in districts before, and they were working district where they wouldn't leave the office. Sergeant would, like, to your example, they would have they wouldn't even wear their gun. They would show up a roll call in civilian clothes and have their gun belts on their chair. We'd be in a chase, in a fight, in a fucking, getting shot at, and the sergeants would never show up. They were like, oh, well, I worked in district for 4 years, and I had one sergeant show up on an alarm call that he happened to be driving past. That's the only call I ever seen him on in 4 years. I mean, so you look at the leadership doing what they're supposed to be doing and leading by example. They don't do it. You have a very few. It's like in the Marine Corps, right? So you take the infantry guys, right? So the infantry guys probably lead by example and stuff. Like we'd call them like, what do they call them in Marine Corps? Like POGs, grunts. Yeah. So we call them POPs, personnel and police that are sergeants, lieutenants, and captains. They have no freaking clue how things are supposed to work. They never were cops. They were coordinators. They were, did their minimum time in a non-working district. And now all they don't want to do is they don't want to have to do paperwork. They don't want to have to do anything. And it affects the whole morale of the whole district if you have a shitty leader. Just think if you're a platoon and you have a sergeant major or somebody who's got the experience, and you got a first lieutenant or second lieutenant comes on, and it's just because they have the schooling and training, they think they know it all, right? So they could destroy the morale of the whole platoon because they're useless, right? We call them, they don't know what's going on. And the same thing in police work. So, and I literally never had to write anybody up ever, other than like if it's a preventable accident or whatever.
Yeah.
That you'd have to like, oh, okay, yeah, you could have prevented this. And I'll tell my guys, hey, we do what we're supposed to do. If we do the right thing, within policy and state law, I'm going to fight for you. If we fuck up, we're going to own it, take responsibility, and we'll deal with it, right? So if we do something and it's just outside of the realm of policy or state law, we'll own it, right? We can't. I'm not going to fight a fight that we can't win. So we have to fall on the sword per se and take responsibility. But we didn't do that because we were doing everything within policy and state law, and I'd fight to the death for my dudes, and my guys never got in trouble the entire time I was a sergeant because we were doing what we were supposed to be doing. And sometimes the lieutenant or captain or major might come back and say, try to criticize us, and I would take it from my dudes like I tell them I would, and we'd always win. And then sometimes in effect that would affect me. Then they would come after me because they couldn't get to my dudes. And I had a major who I really respected. He told me, hey, the guys who work for you and are equal to you love you because you don't drink the Kool-Aid and you take care of people. But some of the higher ups who don't like you because you don't drink the Kool-Aid and you take care of people. And I said, I'd rather have the respect of my subordinates and equals any day than some asshole in the office in the LEC, Law Enforcement Center, who has no clue what being a police officer is. And I'll fall on the sword and take the hit for my guys any day because I love my dudes. And my goal was to get them home alive and safe. And if I have to take a write-up because we did the right thing and had to stay safe, and the perception was that we were aggressive or something, I'll do that any day of the week.
I agree. I just have one more thing to add on this. If you're ready to move on to our video on nutrition, but my opinion, is when you're in a position of leadership, whether it be obviously, sergeant, lieutenant on up, I think what gets lost the most is communication. If you're sending out a directive, a policy, an order, people just want to know the why.
Exactly.
That's down the chain from your.
That makes sense.
Yeah, it's just like on the street. If I tell someone to sit down, and if I say, hey man, can you do me a favor and sit down? I'm going to get your info, and then I'm going to kick you loose. Right now they're like, oh, I'll sit down. But I think what we, in my experience, a lot of the time we're told we need to do things. We're told we have to do this, and there's never a why. There's not the communication. So, good leaders communicate. Good leaders share, the why. We all want to know why and get buy-in. So a lot of the time things come down as an order, but there's no attempt to get buy-in or an explanation. So that's just something that I observed over the years. And I think like, why can't they just tell us why? This is such bullshit. Why are we doing this?
Type A personality, just if it makes sense, we'll do it, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And I think that's what most human beings, not just cops, tell me why I'm doing this. Tell me why I'm having to now check 6 more boxes on this form, not because the commander said so. No, like why? What's the point? And sell me on this,
And that made a good point. Dude, do you remember watching like Cops in the 90s? So I went to police academy in 98. So you graduated in 99. But Cops was like my training video. Like, like how awesome Cops were. Do you watch Cops now? Like
no.
It's I think it's like on Fox.
No.
Where it's like totally different, man. Like,
Oh, yeah.
like you used to be asked, like we talked about before, ask,
Tell them, make them.
tell, and now it's like ask,
Yeah.
beg,
They,
beg, plead, plead,
yeah.
plead. It's ridiculous,
Yeah.
and it's just totally different.
Yeah.
And it's, I get the updates. I'm still a FOP member about officers getting charged and reading about. I got an email yesterday about dudes going up because all the officers are getting charged from these officer involved shootings. Did you see where the 3 Memphis officers got cleared? They were charged, from 2021.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they were cleared. Even though it looked really fucking. I mean, their training was like, I was like, oh my god, they look ghetto as hell, dude. I mean, it was really bad, but they got cleared. Don't know if there's going to be any recourse from that for like riots or whatever. But a lot of these officers who get charged for doing their job, it might look bad, but they get cleared because the law allows them to do certain things. And sometimes when they charge these officers, they kind of do it to appease the public. But what happens when they do that is if the elements aren't there and they didn't violate the law and they just do based on perception and then they get cleared, it causes more issues after the fact.
Yeah.
Than it does do the right thing. Say, hey, yeah, this didn't look good as a department, as a training issue, but they were within policy, they were within state law, or they violated policy doesn't mean they violated state law. But just because it looks bad doesn't mean it was illegal. So, and then these DAs get themselves in a corner because they want to make people happy, so they charge these officers when the elements aren't there, and then it goes to court and gets dismissed, or they get found not guilty or mistrial, and it causes more problems after the fact.
Yeah, they're just kicking the can down the road. Eventually,
100%. That's a good analogy. And so, not to say if you against policy is one thing, right? Against state law is a different thing, right? So if you violate state law or federal law, you need to be held accountable. But if you didn't, you can't just be, oh, it looks bad, and something bad ended up happening. They use a reasonable amount of force. People don't realize, and even administrators use the term least amount of force. Like, no,
necessary.
It's always the reasonable amount of force, right? So it doesn't have to be the least amount. It's a reasonable amount.
Hello, gentlemen.
Hello.
Hey.
I know we were supposed to move along to the nutrition topic, but instead of doing that, just because we're coming up on time here, I wanted to ask you guys about the gentlemen, the officers that were just found not guilty in Memphis. So that happened today. I don't know if you guys remember that, where the cops beat up the guy and kicked him, and it was all caught on video.
Mm-hmm.
So because I'm not a cop, could never be one, I would never have cleared the psych test. But with that being said, I just wanted to get you guys' opinion before we wrap up the amazing show that you guys have given us. If you guys could just let us know each. We'll start with Nick, since you're the special guest. And let us know what your take is on that.
I'm not super familiar with it. I do remember it. It was in Memphis, and if I recall, several officers used force, like hands, feet, and fists on a suspect. And so that's news to me that the 3 of them were cleared.
Yes.
I knew that was in trial and going through the system, but I mean, again, my opinion on it is it goes back to training, training. When you're not training in those situations, whether it's scenario based or being involved in those situations frequently, sometimes we talked earlier about adrenaline. So when you get that adrenaline dump, sometimes that's when the F words come out and you lose your coordination. You get what we call like tunnel vision. So you might not be able to hear, you might see about like this, and so I don't know. I mean, my opinion on that, it was probably a lack of training. It could be a morale issue. You got a bunch of pissed off cops with not a lot of training, and they're short officers. They're working long hours, and this dude just not doing what he's supposed to be doing. They may have dealt with him 10 times that week, and they're just like, I'm done with your ass. And, again, not making excuses for him, because I don't know. I wasn't there. And then some of the language, it's like, we've all been there, that switch flips and the words start coming out and things that you shouldn't be saying. But, it goes back to being able to regulate your emotions and remain professional and use the right words if you can. Sometimes we don't, and just using the least amount of force, to bring the person into custody. So that's kind of just my high level overview, my opinion on it, but I wish I could give you more.
Oh, I'm gonna give you some after. I'm gonna tell you my opinion on it.
All right.
Go ahead to look to the co-host of this show. Why don't you go ahead and tell us what your thoughts are?
So I can tell you right away, their actions in training was horrible, right? So there is one thing to be like, drop the fucking gun, or I'll shoot you to fucking drop the gun, right? So, but they were straight hood, right? So the things they were, and you have to remember. So we want to do things to get people to comply. So sometimes we have to be aggressive. So sometimes I'll shoot you in your fucking head, drop the gun, right? So that sounds aggressive, but my ultimate goal is for them to drop the gun or knife or whatever weapon they have. So if they do that, it's a win, because I don't have to shoot them, right? I've had to shoot people before. I don't want to have to shoot them. If I have to be aggressive and be like, drop the fucking gun, and they drop the gun, and then they write me up for cursing, I'll take that, because I didn't have to shoot the person. These guys, they didn't sound professional. Their training was I mean, they were like, motherfucker, like they sounded like they were straight from the fucking hood, right? It's like a beat down.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to remember, training and experience should overcome that. So it should be, you need to be as professional as you can to get compliance. So sometimes you have to throw an F-bomb out or whatever. But if you're calling somebody a motherfucker, like, it just like bitch ass motherfucker, and like you're justified. It looks like you're not, even if you are.
Okay. So as the layman on the outside of this, and not the officer, and someone who's never worn the badge, I believe their conduct was atrocious.
It was.
And how they handled this guy was disgusting. So I do believe that, because this started with training, this entire segment that you guys have been speaking about, we started with the training aspect of this. I don't believe there's enough training, but I also don't believe there's enough vetting. So when some people should not be officers, some people should not wear the badge. And generally, I'm just speaking from the layman side of this, that people who become cops are generally like the kid who was like picked on and not like popular in school.
Yeah.
So you give them a lot of power by giving them a gun, a taser, a badge, and they lose control. When you watch that video back, he was down, he was motionless, he was not fighting. He didn't even have the strength or the ability to comply anymore, because they had beat that out of him. I think it's very, very disgusting that in a time such as this, when cops are not looked upon very well, that we end up in a space where we have these men who are very obviously guilty. I don't even know how they were able to find them not guilty. If you really look at the videos, if you look back at it, right, and you watch it, and I hate to put you guys on the spot like that, but it was just something that came out today. It just broke today that they were found not guilty. They still have some federal charges on lesser charges, but the second degree murder was, they were found not guilty. I'm I often wonder how much training can you give someone who mentally, emotionally should not even be wearing the badge.
because that's how important, to your point, is how important the rescue, like you got to screen these people, right?
Yeah.
So to your point, people all the time come to me like, I'm like, hey, I'm a retired cop, and like, I hate fucking cops. I'm like, I don't like most of them, right? Honestly, like, because
Yeah.
like a lot of them are just assholes, right? So I always tell people, or did assholes become cops, or do you become an asshole because you're a cop? What happens for like chicken or the egg? So so
Assholes become cops. I don't think.
yeah,
I think if you're a good human, I think you would make a great cop because there is this
it
empathy and compassion,
it
and you
has to
really
be
want to help your
it has to be
community.
a calling. So you have, and that's
Yes.
what I always preach. You have to have the mentality, right? You have to have the calling. So for me, I was never the most popular person, right? I played sports, so I was in the popular crowd. But my entire life, I always took up for the person getting bullied.
Okay.
So the aspect that I took as being a cop was I wanted to protect the people who can't protect themselves, right? So I wanted to take up for the person getting bullied. That was the way I felt and what I wanted to do. But there's other people who are like, yeah, just totally different. And you could tell the ones that have been, beat up and have an axe to grind, and they should be weeded out because they don't represent the profession, and they don't represent. I mean, it should be my passion, my identity was being a cop. I want to represent. I would I would never do anything negative to represent the profession because even when I was off duty and uh, or I just cared about it. So, but you have the other aspect that, oh well, I've got an axe to grind. I've got and Nick can tell you that. I mean, probably 50% of cops, like, cops don't get along just because they're cops, right? You have some related, but there's a lot of people. I mean, it's like a high school, right? Like you got all this, you got people that get along and don't get along, but you have a Nick. What would you say? Like, I mean, because you have that, like Ink said, you have that portion who were bullied and picked on and have an axe to grind, and then they're the ones doing the excessive force. They don't have the mentality to do the training. They don't give a shit. They want the power, and they
Well,
don't.
and I also think there's a desperate need for police officers, so the standard starts to get lowered. So,
Yeah,
there once upon a time the standard
yeah.
was really high to become a cop.
Because
Now
when
it's
I got
very low.
when I got hired, I was competing against like 5,000 applicants for a
Yes.
100
Yeah.
person academy. Now
Yeah.
it's like they have to beg 100 applicants for a 50 person academy.
Yeah.
So
So
they're
I mean,
yeah.
I'm not here to beat up on the police because I do
Hey,
support
let me ask
police.
you a question. You're not six
Yes.
six, are you?
I'm not what?
You're not 6'6", like Blue Six.
Princess? No, I'm
Yes.
shorter than Prince.
Yeah.
That's just the
You're trying to
running
make
joke
like
that we have. No,
I'm
that's yeah, that's just our running joke. But no, I just wanted to ask the question just
I,
because it was such a
I'm
high
glad you did.
profile
I'm glad.
case.
Yeah.
I have
Yeah,
something I would like to add on that. Since we were
yes,
just discussing in the last segment leadership, it was also a leadership failure because I
agreed.
guarantee you that those officers have all done stuff like that before. It's
Yes.
been seen, it's been ignored, and it went unchecked, and that was the end result. So going back to leadership, yes, the officers are dead wrong, and it was terrible what they did. But the fact that it was allowed to happen was a leadership failure, in my opinion.
And Pat Bridges brought up a great example. You get the primary psych eval, and like I said, I never had to write it in my cops because I dealt with them and said, hey, this is an issue, fix it, and I never had a problem again. But if I did, I would deal with it. But because I just happened to have a great group of guys because I was over always in specialized units. So usually the specialized unit guys are the ones that work hard and do what they're supposed to be doing. But there should be a yearly psych evaluation, not
Yeah, I
only
agree.
to protect the public, but to help the officer that
Well, and I think
is
too that
suffering.
you guys did a whole segment on mental health, and I do believe that that is a huge part that as a person who's not who doesn't do the job, we don't understand what you guys are exposed to every day. No one knows what it's like to put on a uniform where you literally have a target on your back just for wearing the uniform. So I respect anyone who would do the job. It's not a job I can do, because if I didn't have a dog, I would probably shoot you. So, there's like a balance. I'm not chasing you. I'm not running. I'm not doing any of this kind of stuff. If my dog doesn't get you, I'm going to get you. And that's why I have a Belgian Malinois, because if he's the first defense of not getting you. So hope the dog gets you before I do. But anyways, I just wanted to ask you guys that. I appreciate you guys. I'm just jumping in and, just to be a little bit of a buffer.
That's a great freaking question. and it's real. And
Okay.
I'm sure Nick would tell you that I see it all the time. A lot of people are cops who are like, they have no business being in this profession.
Well, I appreciate this, and I'm glad that you guys allowed me to join. Nick, I want to say on behalf of Prince, who is out there.
And his doctor's great.
Yeah,
right?
who's being great. We watched him. We watched him get hooded, and we watched him walk the stage today. It was fantastic and awesome. I'm super proud of my brother. Nick, thank you for joining us. And I appreciate you being here.
Brother. Like, even though we never met in person, and this is only the second time we met online, like, isn't it awesome? Like, just because, we were in the same profession before, and I feel like we're bonded, but I really enjoyed having you on, and dude, you're my brother, dude. It's just because we it's awesome how we bond, and I'm so proud.
I appreciate that.
Like,
right.
I get goosebumps thinking about the accomplishments that he's achieved.
Yeah,
he's
awesome.
Amazing. Like, I just love the dude. But just what accomplishment is that to become a doctor?
Well, don't let it go to his head. We'll cut it off there.
You
boasted him enough.
I'm proud of him, man. I've got
the first 2 minutes.
Yeah,
we're good. He's good. Yeah, he's all right. But anyways, I want to thank everybody for joining us.
Absolutely.
Everybody that's here. Prince will be back, I believe. No, I think he might even be out next week. I think he's going to Turks and Caicos. He's going on vacation. I'm not sure. But anyways, I appreciate you. Thanks, Nick, for joining us.
Yeah.
We will, whenever the Black and Blue will be back, they'll be back. But I'll be here on Friday with the trifecta. Prince will be here. AJ will be here.
Don't miss it.
Thank you guys so much. We appreciate you.
Nice meeting you.
Have a good night, everybody.
Awesome. We'll see you later.
Yeah. Look, black and blue lines. Yeah. Hey, that's a new vibe. Yeah. Hey, black and blue lines. Yeah. Hey, that's a new vibe. Yeah. Hey, podcast lit. I think we got a hit. Yeah. Hey, black and blue lines. Yeah. Look, we got Prince Blue and Steph talking black and blue lives. Yeah. The black and blue lives.